I did not believe in ghosts before the Atlantic. Not the kind sailors whisper about when the lights dim and the hull starts to groan. Not the kind that could live in steel, or move through wires, or follow a man through layers of water deep enough to crush him into something unrecognizable. I believed in mechanics, in sonar returns, in signatures and patterns that could be explained, logged, and filed away. That changed somewhere southwest of the Faroe Islands in 1983, aboard the Ardent Vale. We were operating in the GI-UK Gap, one of the most sensitive naval corridors of the Cold War. Our mission was routine, passive surveillance, tracking any Soviet submarine traffic attempting to slip into the Atlantic. We were a Sturgeon-class fast-attack submarine, nuclear-powered, built for stealth and endurance. 73 men sealed inside a pressure hull, each trained to trust systems over instinct. I was a sonar technician, second class. My world was sound, filtered, processed, translated into meaning. I could tell the difference between a distant cargo vessel and a submerged warship from a faint acoustic trace. The ocean, to me, was never silent. It was alive with noise. Until it wasn't. The first anomaly came through as a low-frequency disturbance. Barely noticeable at first, sitting beneath the threshold most operators would bother isolating. It repeated, though. That was what caught my attention. 3 distinct pulses, evenly spaced. A pause. Then 2 more. I adjusted the filters, cleaned the signal, and listened again. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. I logged it as biological interference. Large marine animals sometimes produced percussive sounds, especially in colder waters. It wasn't unusual. But something about the regularity stayed with me. Natural patterns drift. They vary. This didn't. Hours passed, and the signal stayed with us. Not behind us, not ahead of us, just there. As if it occupied the same space we did. By the time my next shift began, the temperature in the forward compartments had dropped enough for people to notice. Not dangerously, but enough that men started pulling on extra layers. Environmental controls reported no issues. Reactor output was steady. Everything checked out. Still, the air felt wrong. Thinner, somehow. And there was a smell, not strong, but persistent. Metallic, but not like steel or machinery. It reminded me of old coins left too long in salt water. A kind of aged corrosion that didn't belong inside a sealed vessel. It seemed strongest in the sonar room. I isolated the signal again. This time, I pushed the system harder, narrowing the frequency band until the noise of the ocean dropped away. What remained wasn't behaving like sound traveling through water. It didn't attenuate with distance. It didn't shift with our movement. It felt closer. I called over Scope 3 for confirmation. He listened, adjusted his own station, and then looked at me without saying anything. Same pattern. No identifiable source. No propeller signature. No hydrodynamic trace. Nothing that suggested an object moving through water. Lieutenant Commander Hayes reviewed the logs himself. He wasn't the kind of officer who entertained speculation. Everything had to be grounded, measurable. Could it be structural? He asked. No, sir, I said. It's too consistent. He studied me for a moment. Demonstrate. I hesitated, then tapped my knuckles lightly against the metal edge of the console. 3 taps, evenly spaced. We waited. 5 seconds later, the return came through the system. 3 knocks. Not identical in tone, but perfectly matched in timing. No one spoke for several seconds after that. The word iron coffin surfaced later, spoken by Chief Morales in a tone that suggested he didn't fully believe what he was saying. Old fishermen's stories, he called it. Ships hearing knocking from beneath their hulls in these waters, long before sonar existed. Stories about something below the seabed, something that responded. It should have been dismissed. Most of it was. But the pattern didn't go away. If anything, it grew more deliberate. The ocean around us began to change in ways that had nothing to do with sound alone. The usual background noise, the constant chatter of marine life, faded until it was gone entirely. No whale calls. No distant clicks. Not even the faint crackle of shrimp that usually filled the lower frequencies. The sea had gone quiet. For a sonar operator, that kind of silence is not relief. It's absence. It's something missing that should be there. I tried another test during a late shift, when most of the crew was off rotation. I tapped again, this time only twice. The response came immediately. 2 knocks. Not mimicry. Not delayed repetition. Recognition. Engineering reported micro-vibrations along the hull around the same time. Nothing strong enough to indicate damage, but enough to register on sensitive instruments. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't structural stress. It felt like contact, except there was nothing there. No sonar return. No visual confirmation. Nothing to suggest an object close enough to touch us. And yet, the hull behaved as if something was. We dug into archived acoustic logs, searching for anything similar. Buried in the system was a partial recording from a Soviet submarine incident decades earlier. The details were incomplete, heavily redacted. The vessel had been lost under circumstances officially attributed to onboard failure. The audio file contained a familiar pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Identical. Whatever we were hearing had been heard before. The behavior shifted when we attempted to change course. Hayes ordered a gradual drift eastward, just enough to test whether the signal was tied to a fixed location. The knocking intensified almost immediately. Faster, louder, less controlled. It lost its clean rhythm and became something closer to agitation. When we returned to our original heading, it stopped. Not faded. Not diminished. Stopped. The implications settled over the crew without being spoken. We weren't tracking something moving through the water. We were inside something's boundary. Hayes made the decision to descend. It wasn't standard procedure, but it was justified under anomaly investigation. The deeper we went, the more the hull creaked under pressure, each sound amplified in the confined space. At around 600 meters, the knocking changed. It was no longer coming through the sonar. It was coming through everything. Metal surfaces began to carry the sound. Pipes, bulkheads, even the frames of the consoles. It resonated in a way that bypassed hearing entirely. You could feel it in your teeth, in the bones of your skull. 3 knocks. Pause. 2 knocks. Then something else. A longer sequence. Irregular. Structured. Morales stood beside me, listening. "That's not random," he said quietly. I didn't answer, because I knew. It wasn't just a pattern anymore. It was communication. One of the younger technicians found the mark sometime later. It appeared on a section of bulkhead where condensation had formed. 5 vertical lines, crossed by 2 horizontal ones. Not scratched in the usual sense. There were no tool marks, no indication of something dragging across the surface. It looked as if the metal itself had been pressed outward from within. No one claimed responsibility. No one joked about it. We all understood, without saying it, that nothing inside the submarine had made that. At greater depth, the seabed finally appeared on our mapping sonar. Flat, unremarkable, stretching out in all directions. Except for one anomaly. A vertical structure. Narrow. Too regular to be natural. Too tall to be debris. It rose from the ocean floor like a pillar, approximately 40 meters in height. It didn't emit any detectable signal. It didn't reflect sound in a way that made sense. It was there, and not there, depending on how we tried to observe it. The knocking aligned with its position. As we approached, the signal grew quieter. Not fading, but withdrawing. Like something stepping back. At roughly 300 meters distance, it stopped completely. Every system stabilized at once. The temperature returned to normal. The metallic smell vanished. The ocean noise, faint at first, began to return. It felt like exhaling after holding a breath too long. In that moment, the understanding settled in. We had not been followed. We had been watched. The knocking had never been an attempt to communicate in the way we understood it. It had been a warning, a marker, a boundary being reinforced. We had crossed into something's territory, and it had chosen not to escalate. Hayes didn't hesitate after that. He ordered immediate withdrawal. No further approach. No attempts to interact. Whatever data we had was enough. Or too much. The official report reduced everything to a geological anomaly. Unidentified acoustic interference. No threat detected. No further action required. It was clean, contained, easy to file away. But there was an understanding among those of us who had been there that the report didn't reflect what we had experienced. The ocean had not been empty. It had been occupied. Not by something that hunted or chased, but by something that defined space in a way we couldn't measure. Something that listened, responded, and enforced its boundaries without ever fully revealing itself. Even now, years later, I sometimes hear it. Not through equipment. Not through water. Just in quiet moments, when everything else fades. 3 knocks. A pause. 2 knocks. Not calling me back. Just reminding me that somewhere, far below where light can reach and pressure erases form, something is still there. And it still knows exactly where the line is drawn.